The cockpit door wasn't supposed to open up here, not at 35,000 feet, not while most people were half asleep with movies playing and ice melting in plastic cups. But it did. And the strangest part was who slipped through it. A small 14-year-old girl in a washed teal hoodie, hair tucked behind her ears, moving like she belonged there, like she'd done it before. Nobody stopped her, because nobody even noticed her. They were too busy arguing over reclined seats, too busy scrolling, too busy thinking the worst thing that could happen on a normal flight was turbulence. They didn't know the two pilots up front were already gone, not dead, but worse, silent, slumped forward in their harnesses, oxygen masks hanging useless beside them. They didn't know the aircraft was still cruising only because a machine was holding its breath for them. And they definitely didn't know that in less than a minute, this ordinary kid was about to grab a radio and say 3 words that would make military aircraft circling miles away freeze mid-sentence. Because those 3 words weren't just a call sign. They were a ghost. A name every soldier in that airspace remembered from war reports and memorial photos, a pilot the world believed was buried 4 years ago. And when the emergency frequency crackled and that girl's voice came through, steady as steel, it didn't sound like fear, it sounded like command. Call sign Phoenix. And if you think you've heard crazy flight stories before, I promise you've never heard one like this. Before we jump in, comment where you're watching from, and if you want more true style cinematic stories like this, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. A few minutes earlier, she was just another passenger in the middle of the cabin, the kind nobody remembers 5 seconds after walking past. Seat 10E, the dreaded middle seat, pinned between a man in a crisp jacket hammering an email like the world would end if he missed a deadline, and a teen with big headphones nodding to music only he could hear. The girl didn't complain, didn't fidget like most kids would, didn't ask to switch seats. She sat still, shoulders relaxed, chin slightly down, like she was conserving energy for something. Her teal hoodie looked a little too big, the sleeves bunched at her wrists, black leggings, scuffed sneakers with frayed laces, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed attention. And that was the point. Because if anyone had actually looked closely, they would have noticed the details that didn't match normal kid. The way her eyes kept moving, not wandering, scanning. Exit rows, crew positions, who looked calm, who looked jumpy, how many steps to the nearest door. Like she was mapping the entire aircraft in her head. She had white earbuds in, but it wasn't music making her face so focused. Her lips moved sometimes, barely, like she was answering a question no one else could hear. And her fingers, resting on her thighs, kept making tiny, precise motions. Not random tapping, not boredom. More like invisible switches, invisible levers, practiced movements that belonged in a cockpit, not in row 10. To everyone else, she was just a quiet kid traveling alone, probably headed to family, maybe a school trip, maybe a visit for the holidays. But the truth was, she wasn't daydreaming. She was listening to a calm woman's voice in her ear, measured and professional, repeating the kind of words most adults wouldn't understand. Oxygen first. Control second. Altitude, airspeed, attitude. And while the cabin hummed with ordinary life, the girls sat there like someone who'd already seen the ending of this story and was silently preparing to fight it. Nobody on that plane knew her real story. Not the man beside her, not the flight attendants rolling carts, not the people laughing over headphones and snacks. They didn't know the girl's name was Isla Park, and they definitely didn't know the name that followed her like a shadow. Because Isla didn't come from a normal family. She came from a legend. Her mother wasn't a teacher, or a nurse, or a "my mom works at an office" kind of mom. Her mother was Captain Lena Park, United States Army, Black Hawk pilot, the kind of person other pilots spoke about with a lower voice and a serious face. The kind of pilot who didn't just fly into danger. She flew into places other people refused to even look at. They called her Phoenix. Not because it sounded cool. Because she earned it. Years ago on her first combat rescue, a convoy got hit and the radio turned into pure panic. Smoke, fire, shouting, wounded men on the ground. Command said it was too hot to go in. Too risky. Too late. Phoenix went anyway. She dropped that helicopter into a storm of bullets like she was threading a needle. Lifted soldiers out of hell one by one. And when she rose out of that valley with the wounded alive, the aircraft scorched and shaking, people said it looked like a bird clawing its way out of flames. From then on, the call sign stuck. Over the years, Phoenix became the pilot you prayed would answer when everything went wrong. Dozens of missions, medals, quiet respect, the kind you can't fake. Then 4 years ago, the story ended the way stories like hers always end on paper. A routine extraction mission went sideways in hostile territory. Her Black Hawk was hit, it went down hard. 2 crew members were gone instantly. And Phoenix was listed as killed in action, body not recovered. There was a memorial back home with folded flags and crying strangers. A 21-gun salute that echoed across the base like thunder. And in the front row sat 10-year-old Isla, too small in her black dress, hands clenched tight, face dry, eyes empty. People whispered about how brave she was. How strong. How mature. But what they didn't understand was this. Isla wasn't strong because she accepted her mother was dead. Isla was strong because she knew her mother wasn't. Because weeks after that funeral, long after everyone stopped checking on her, long after the casseroles and sympathy calls faded away, Isla learned a truth she was never supposed to carry at 10 years old. Phoenix had survived. And the reason she couldn't come home wasn't because she didn't want to. It was because coming home would paint a target on the one person she loved more than her own life. Her daughter. What Isla knew, and what she never said out loud, was that her mother didn't die in a crash. She was hunted. Because that shoot-down wasn't bad luck, and it wasn't random enemy fire. It was planned. Phoenix had seen something she wasn't supposed to see. Not on the battlefield, but behind the curtain. Names, patterns, quiet deals, information leaking at the exact moments it should have been locked down. And soldiers were paying for it with their lives. She started collecting proof the careful way. Screenshots, notes, timestamps, small pieces that meant nothing alone but became a weapon when you stacked them together. She meant to report it the right way when she got home. But the moment she realized the truth, she also realized something else. The people involved weren't low-level. They had rank, reach, and friends in the right rooms. And when they found out Phoenix was building a case, they didn't argue with her. They erased her. The helicopter went down hard in hostile land. 2 crew didn't make it. Phoenix did, barely. Broken leg, ribs cracked, bleeding inside, trapped in wreckage with dirt in her mouth and smoke in her lungs. And the only reason she lived was because locals reached her first. Not soldiers, not command, locals. They dragged her out, hit her, stitched her up with whatever they had, moved her at night, kept her alive until they could slip her through back roads and shadow networks. 3 months after the world buried her, Phoenix was back on U.S. soil. And she understood the cruel math immediately. If she walked into a base alive, the people who tried to kill her would know they failed. And the next time they wouldn't miss. And they wouldn't stop with her. They'd go after her parents. They'd go after her friends. They'd go after the one person she couldn't protect with a weapon. Isla. So Phoenix made the hardest choice a mother can make. She stayed dead. New name, new face, never staying anywhere long, living like a ghost. But she refused to vanish from her daughter's life completely. Instead, she built a bridge no one could trace. Burner phones bought with cash and smashed after one call. Emails made in public libraries and never opened twice from the same place. Messages hidden inside online games like normal chat, except every line was code. Even dead drops, old school, a plain envelope tucked behind a loose brick where Isla could grab it on the way home. And Isla carried the secret alone. Not even her grandparents knew. They mourned their daughter for real, because Phoenix couldn't risk them slipping, even once. Then the training started. 6 months after the memorial, a package arrived, no return address. Inside was a laptop loaded with a serious flight simulator, the kind real training schools use. And a note in handwriting Isla would recognize anywhere. For your education, love, Mom. That night Isla cried so hard she could barely breathe. And then she wiped her face and turned it on. 3 times a week, always the same time, Phoenix would appear as a voice only, never a face. Calm, focused, patient. Lesson by lesson, she taught her daughter the sky. Not to make her a pilot on paper, but to make her impossible to helpless. How to read instruments when you can't see outside. How to stay calm when alarms scream. How to breathe first and think second. How to fly when everything goes wrong. And every session ended the same way. I love you, baby, Phoenix would say. I love you too, Mom, Isla would whisper back. For years of that. For years of quiet lessons and secret strength. Until Isla's hands didn't look like a child's hands anymore when they moved. They looked like a pilot's hands. Isla didn't wake up that morning thinking today would be the day all that training stopped being practice. She was just traveling, alone like she'd done before, one backpack under the seat, one hoodie pulled tight, trying to look like every other kid on a routine flight. And in her earbuds, Phoenix's voice played like it always did, steady and familiar, almost comforting. Rapid decompression at altitude, oxygen first, then control, then descent. You have seconds, baby, not minutes. Mask on, breathe, then fly. Isla mouthed the answers silently, like a prayer she repeated so many times it was carved into her bones. Oxygen mask, assess aircraft control, check altitude, emergency descent. Her fingers made tiny movements on her lap, the same invisible throttle and yoke dance she'd done hundreds of nights in her room. To the man beside her, it looked like nervous fidgeting. To Isla, it was rehearsal. Then the airplane tore open. It wasn't turbulence, not a bump, not a shake. It was a violent crack like the sky itself split. A thunderclap inside a metal tube. The whole cabin jolted, lights flickered, and a roar exploded through the aisle. Not screaming, not engine noise. The sound of air ripping out of the aircraft like a giant trying to suck the life out of everyone at once. The pressure dropped so fast people didn't even have time to understand fear. Their brains just went blank with shock. Ears popping, chests tightening. Panic rising without a name. Then the oxygen masks dropped. Yellow cups swinging like 100 little lifelines. People grabbed at them like drowning swimmers, some putting them on wrong, some frozen, some screaming into plastic. A flight attendant shouted instructions, but her words got swallowed by the roar. Isla didn't hesitate. Her hand shot up, pulled the mask down, pressed it tight over her nose and mouth, band around her head, inhale, exhale, steady. Good airflow. She looked left and right and saw chaos. A child crying. A woman shaking so hard she couldn't get the elastic over her hair. A man clawing at his mask like it was choking him. But Isla's mind had already clicked into the cold, clear place Phoenix trained her to enter. Explosive decompression, big breach, likely near the front. If it sounded like it came from the cockpit, then the cockpit got hit worse. Pilots are trained for this. Mask in seconds. Emergency descent, announcement, calm voice, control. But there was no announcement. No captain, no steady authority over the speakers. Just wind and fear and the unsettling sense that something was missing. Then Isla felt it, the subtle wrongness in the way the aircraft moved. A slight dip, a wobble, a gentle roll like the plane was trying to correct itself without anyone truly guiding it. Autopilot, she thought. Autopilot can hold a course. But it can't think. It can't react like a human when the aircraft is damaged. And it definitely can't help if the people who should be awake up front are not. Isla unclicked her seatbelt and stood, still breathing through the mask. The businessman beside her grabbed her sleeve, eyes wild above his own mask. "Sit down, are you crazy?" Isla pulled free, her voice muffled but firm. "I need to check the front." She stepped into the aisle, bracing against seatbacks as the cabin rocked. And she saw a senior flight attendant, an older woman with a tight bun and a face that said she'd handled emergencies before, moving fast toward the cockpit door. Isla followed her without thinking. Because something deep inside her, something trained into her by a mother who refused to let her be helpless, was screaming one truth louder than the wind. If the pilots don't wake up, this plane is going to become a falling object with 267 souls inside it. The senior flight attendant reached the cockpit door with both hands shaking, but her voice trying to stay strong. She punched in the emergency code, leaned her shoulder into the reinforced door, and forced it open against the stubborn pull of pressure and fear. The door swung wider. And she froze. Isla saw it over her shoulder and her stomach dropped. The cockpit wasn't just messy, it was wrong. Too still. Too quiet. Like the front of the plane had gone unconscious before anyone in the cabin realized it. Both pilots were slumped forward in their seats, strapped in but lifeless looking, oxygen masks hanging beside them like useless decorations. Their heads tilted at angles that screamed one terrifying truth. They never got the masks on in time. The flight attendant made a strangled sound through her own mask, half gasp, half prayer. "Oh no, no, no." Isla pushed past her. "Hey, stop," the flight attendant snapped, panic cracking her voice. "Get out of there, you're a child." But Isla didn't flinch. Because Phoenix didn't train her to freeze. Phoenix trained her to move. She stepped into the cockpit and the noise of the cabin faded behind her, replaced by blinking lights and instrument screens glowing like a city at night. Isla's eyes went straight to the primary display. Altitude still dangerously high. Speed slipping. The aircraft holding itself together by autopilot muscle memory. She slid into the right seat and it swallowed her like it wasn't built for someone her size. So she adjusted everything fast, seat forward, seat up, pedals closer, the way she'd done 100 times in training. The flight attendant hovered in the doorway, voice rising. "You can't do this, you don't even know what you're touching." Isla didn't look back. Her hands found the controls like they belonged there. Not because she was fearless. But because she'd repeated this exact moment in her mind so many nights it felt almost familiar. She checked the engines, no fire warnings, both running. She checked the flight path, still aimed toward Portland. She checked the autopilot status, engaged, struggling. And then she did the one thing that turned this from a nightmare into a fight. She grabbed the radio. Her thumb pressed the transmit button, and her voice came out clear even through the oxygen mask. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday, Skybridge 728, we have explosive decompression, both pilots are unconscious, I am a passenger, I am taking control of the aircraft." For a beat, only static answered. Then air traffic control came back sharp and fast. "Skybridge 728, confirm who is flying, repeat, who is flying the aircraft." Isla swallowed once. This was the moment everyone would either listen, or waste precious seconds arguing. "My name is Isla Park, I'm 14, I have advanced simulator training, I can fly, but I need immediate guidance." There was silence again, the kind that says the whole room on the other end just stopped breathing. And then a new voice cut in, lower, controlled, military calm. "Skybridge 728, this is Talon Lead, Army aircraft in your area, say again, your last name is Park." Isla's fingers tightened on the yoke. Why would the military care about her last name? "Affirmative, Isla Park," she replied. The military voice hesitated like it had just walked into a ghost story. "Park, as in Captain Lena Park, call sign Phoenix." Isla's heart slammed into her ribs. Because she knew what came next. She knew the truth would either save everyone. Or burn the last secret her mother died to protect. And with the plane still bleeding altitude and the cockpit still holding two unconscious pilots, Isla made her choice. "Talon lead," she said, voice steady but shaking underneath. "I need you to patch an encrypted channel through right now, channel designation Omega 7 Tango, tell Phoenix her daughter is at the controls, tell her I need her voice, right now." The moment Isla said, Omega 7 Tango, the radio didn't just get quiet, it got heavy, like everyone on every frequency suddenly realized this wasn't a normal emergency anymore. Seattle Center came back first, fast and clipped, trying to keep control of the airspace and their own disbelief. "Skybridge 728, we have you on radar, we are clearing traffic, maintain heading, state your altitude and airspeed." Isla glanced at the screens, hands steady on the yoke, voice steady on the mic. "Altitude 31,000, airspeed 270 and falling, I have manual contact on controls, pilots are unresponsive." Then Talon lead cut in again, and the military calm in his voice sounded like someone forcing their emotions into a locked box. "Isla, listen to me, this is Chief Warrant Officer Ryan Cole, I flew with Phoenix, I need you to say it clearly, are you claiming Captain Lena Park is alive?" Isla swallowed, her throat tight behind the oxygen mask. "Yes, she's alive, she trained me, and I need her now." You could hear background voices in Cole's aircraft, urgent, overlapping, like a whole crew suddenly standing up at once. Someone was talking to someone else on another headset. Someone else was repeating, Omega 7 Tango, like they couldn't believe they were saying it out loud. Cole keyed his mic again. "Stand by, Isla, I'm contacting higher." On the other end of the world, in rooms Isla had never seen, people started moving like a fire alarm had gone off. Air traffic supervisors pulling up screens. Military coordinators snapping open secure lines. Technicians chasing a channel name that had been flagged and locked away for years like a bad ghost story nobody wanted to admit was real. Back in the cockpit, Isla's reality stayed simple and brutal. The airplane was still hurt. The cabin was still scared. And two grown men who were supposed to be flying were still unconscious inches away from her. The flight attendant hovered at the doorway, eyes wet, voice breaking. "Honey, please, tell me you can do this." Isla didn't turn her head, because if she looked at the fear in that woman's face, she might start feeling her own. She just answered, soft but firm. "I can." The plane shuddered again, a small roll left then right, like it was arguing with the sky. Isla corrected it the way she'd done in training, tiny movements, nothing dramatic. "Keep it smooth," Phoenix's recordings always said, "smooth is survival." Then the radio crackled with a new sound, not a controller, not a pilot, something colder, more technical, like a door unlocking. A burst of static, a thin electronic hiss, then silence. And a woman's voice came through, clean and controlled, like she was stepping into the cockpit without opening a door. "This is Phoenix, identify yourself and state your emergency." Every sound in Isla's chest stopped at once. For one heartbeat she was 10 again, staring at a folded flag, holding a secret too big for her hands. And for the next heartbeat she was 14, gripping a yoke at 30,000 feet. "Mom," Isla said, and her voice cracked so hard it didn't even sound like her. "Mom, it's me." The woman's breath caught, just once, just enough for Isla to hear the love underneath the steel. "Baby, I've got you, talk to me, give me your numbers." Isla blinked hard, forcing her brain back into procedure. "Explosive decompression, both pilots down, I'm in the right seat, oxygen is good, altitude 30,000 descending slowly, airspeed 265, aircraft is unstable, autopilot is engaged but struggling." Phoenix didn't hesitate, her tone instantly turning into pure command. "Okay, listen only to me, ignore everyone else, you trained for this, you are ready. First, confirm your oxygen flow again, pinch the line, feel the pull, tell me it's steady." Isla did it, felt the tug, felt the air. "Steady. Good, now stabilize your attitude, keep wings level, gentle inputs, don't fight the aircraft, guide it. Isla corrected a slight drift, nose level, wings level, breathing slow. Stable. Phoenix's voice stayed calm but sharpened. Now the big step, you're going to disconnect the autopilot. It doesn't understand damage, you do. When you disconnect it, the yoke will get heavier. Don't panic, hold it steady. Ready. Isla's thumb hovered over the button, her mind screaming that this was the line between helped and alone. Then she heard Phoenix again, softer. I'm right here. Do it. Click. The autopilot disengaged, a small chime, and suddenly the aircraft felt alive in her hands, heavier, more real, like the plane finally admitted it needed a human. Isla tightened her grip and held it smooth. I have manual control, Isla said, voice shaking but not breaking. Phoenix's tone warmed for half a second, proud and fierce. Beautiful, baby, beautiful, you're flying. Now we start the emergency descent. We need 10,000 feet fast and safe. Bring both throttles back to idle, deploy speed brakes, pitch down to a 3,000 feet per minute descent, and watch your airspeed like it's a heartbeat, don't let it run away. Isla moved exactly like she'd practiced in her bedroom 1,000 times. Throttles back. Speed brakes out. Nose down, controlled. Descent rate increasing. Descent established, Isla reported, airspeed 285. Perfect, Phoenix said, keep it under 320, keep it smooth, you're doing this. Outside the cockpit windows, Talon lead and another helicopter slid into position off the wing, close enough to see the cockpit through the glass. Cole's voice came through low and stunned. We have visual, we confirm Miner at controls, both pilots slumped, she's flying steady. And somewhere behind all those radios, the world began to wake up. Scanner listeners posting clips. News desks grabbing headlines. People realizing a passenger jet was being flown by a teenager. Guided by a voice that wasn't supposed to exist. But inside the cockpit, none of that mattered. Only one thing mattered. Phoenix was on the line. Isla had the controls. And the plane was finally going down toward breathable air, one calm instruction at a time. By the time they passed 15,000 feet, the screaming in the cabin had changed. Not gone, but softened. Like fear was finally getting enough oxygen to think. Isla could see it through the open cockpit door, flight attendants moving row to row, hands on shoulders, voices trembling but trying to sound steady. People crying into their masks, people praying, people holding strangers like family. But up front, Isla couldn't afford to feel any of that yet. Because the hardest part wasn't the descent. It was what came after. Landing a jet isn't one action, it's a chain. And every link has to hold. Phoenix stayed in Isla's ear like gravity, calm and absolute. Okay, baby, you've done the dangerous part, now we do the precise part. You're going to hear a lot of voices, but you fly with me, understand? Yes, Mom, Isla whispered. Good, tell me your current altitude and speed. Isla checked. Altitude 1000, speed 250, descending. Phoenix didn't waste a word. Perfect, start easing your descent, bring it to 1,000 feet per minute, we don't want to slam into the approach path. Now, I want you to trim, take the pressure out of the yoke, make it light. Isla adjusted trim carefully, felt the yoke relax. Better, she said. Good, that's a pilot move, Phoenix replied, and Isla felt something in her chest unclench. Like she'd just been handed permission to believe she could do this. Air traffic control came in, trying to sound normal while their whole world tilted. Skybridge 728, you are cleared direct to runway 10 right, emergency equipment is standing by, winds are calm, confirm you can accept vectors. Phoenix answered through Isla without even speaking to them directly. Isla, say. Isla keyed the mic. We accept vectors, confirm runway 10 right. Now, Phoenix said, listen, we're going to build the landing, step by step. No rushing, no hero moves, smooth and boring is how you save lives. Isla almost laughed from nerves. Smooth and boring, she repeated. Exactly, Phoenix said, now start your approach checklist. Isla's eyes flicked across the panel like a scanner. Phoenix's voice guided. Flaps 1. Isla moved the lever, the aircraft responded with a subtle change in feel. Flaps 1, speed coming down. Set power to hold 200 knots, Phoenix said, don't chase the needle, small adjustments. Isla nudged the throttles, watched speed stabilize. 200 knots, holding. Good, Phoenix said, now flaps 2. Flaps 2. You're going to feel the nose want to rise, counter it gently. Isla corrected, the aircraft stayed stable. Perfect, Phoenix said, that's it, baby, you're flying the airplane, not fighting it. Outside, the airport appeared ahead like a strip of dark ink against the earth. And Isla saw the flashing lights. Fire trucks and ambulances lined like a guard of honor. And beyond them, helicopters, cameras, tiny moving dots that were people, all watching her. Her palms went slick, her heart hammered so loud it felt like it might shake the yoke. Mom, Isla whispered, I can see the runway. I know, Phoenix said softly, and for half a second the steel in her voice melted into something maternal and aching. Look at me in your mind, baby, you are not alone. Now we do gear. Isla's hand went to the lever, her breath caught. Gear down. The aircraft rumbled, a deep mechanical vibration, like the plane was lowering its feet toward the ground. 3 green lights, Isla reported, gear down and locked. Beautiful, Phoenix said, now we slow. Set 160, flaps 3. Isla did it, and the aircraft felt heavier, slower, more committed to landing. Flaps 3, speed 160. Now final flaps, Phoenix said, full flaps, target speed 140. Isla pulled the lever to full, the wings changed shape, the jet steadied into a glide. Speed 140, holding. Okay, Phoenix said, you are on final, you're lined up, now listen carefully. At 50 feet, you begin the flare, just a gentle pull, you're not trying to climb, you're just trying to soften. Let the main wheels touch first, then the nose. When you feel the wheels, thrust reversers, then brakes, firm and steady. You've done this 100 times. Isla's throat tightened. What if I mess it up? Phoenix didn't yell, didn't lecture. She spoke like a hand on Isla's back. Then we correct. If you float, we let it float, long runway. If it's firm, the gear can take it. The only way you lose is if you freeze. And you don't freeze, baby, you rise. Isla blinked hard, eyes stinging. I rise, she whispered. You rise, Phoenix repeated, now keep your eyes down the runway, don't stare at the ground right under you, look far, breathe. 500 feet. The runway numbers grew huge. 300 feet. Isla's hands trembled but her input stayed smooth. 200 feet. 100 feet. Phoenix's voice softened, almost a whisper. I'm proud of you. 75 feet. Get ready. 50 feet. Now, flare, gentle, gentle. Isla pulled back just a touch, the nose lifted, the aircraft floated for a heartbeat that felt like forever. Then the main wheels kissed the runway with a solid, confident thump. Touchdown, Isla gasped. Now, Phoenix snapped back to procedure, reversers. Isla pulled the levers, the engines roared like beasts held on chains, the jet decelerated hard enough to press her into the seat. Brakes, brakes, steady. Isla pressed, watching speed bleed away. 100 knots. 80. 60. 40. The aircraft slowed, straight and controlled. 20. 10. And finally, the giant machine came to a full stop. For 1 second, Isla didn't move. She just stared at the runway ahead, oxygen mask still on her face, hands locked to the yoke, like if she let go the whole world might collapse. Then Phoenix's voice broke, just a little, raw emotion slipping through the armor. "We're down, baby. You did it. You brought them home." For a moment after the wheels stopped, it felt like the entire plane held its breath. Then the cabin erupted, not with fear this time, but with sound that didn't even have one name. Crying, laughing, praying, people shouting thank you to nobody and everybody all at once. Hands clapping like the applause could stitch their nerves back together. Isla sat frozen in the right seat, still gripping the yoke like it was the only solid thing in the universe. Her oxygen mask felt too loud on her face. Her hoodie clung to her back with sweat. And her whole body started shaking now that it was safe to shake. Phoenix's voice stayed with her, softer now, the way a mother talks when the danger has passed but the child is still trapped in the aftershock. "Breathe, baby, slow. Look at me in your head. You're on the ground, you're safe." Isla swallowed hard. "Mom, we did it. We did it," Phoenix whispered, and Isla heard her trying not to break apart on the radio. "You saved them." Behind them, the flight attendant stood in the doorway like her legs didn't know how to hold her anymore. Tears ran down her cheeks. She put a trembling hand on the cockpit wall like she needed to touch something real. "Honey," she choked, you saved all of us." Isla finally turned her head, eyes red, voice quiet. "My mom saved us, too." Outside, emergency vehicles surrounded the aircraft in a bright ring of flashing lights. Fire trucks, ambulances, security cars, airport operations. And beyond that line, cameras. So many cameras. News helicopters circling at a distance like vultures that smelled a headline. The cockpit door opened wider and paramedics rushed in, oxygen tanks and medical kits swinging. They moved straight to the pilots, checking pulses, lifting eyelids, calling out names that didn't get answers. One paramedic glanced at Isla like he couldn't process what he was seeing. Then went back to his job because two unconscious pilots were still two unconscious pilots. Air traffic control came through again, the controller's voice thick with emotion they couldn't fully hide anymore. "Skybridge 728, emergency crews are on scene, confirm passengers are safe." Isla glanced at the cabin. "Passengers are alive," she replied, voice steadier than she felt. "We need medical assistance for the pilots." "Copy," ATC answered, and there was something like relief in that one word. Isla unbuckled and stood carefully, her knees weak. The flight attendant reached for her instinctively as if Isla might fall apart into pieces. Isla took one step back, then another, looking down the aisle. And something happened that made her chest tighten in a different way. As passengers began moving toward the front to evacuate, some of them saw her in the cockpit. A kid, in a hoodie, standing where only pilots stand. And their faces changed. One man started sobbing openly. A woman pressed her hands together and whispered thank you like Isla was a miracle. A teenager stared with wide eyes, then nodded like he couldn't speak. One by one they passed the cockpit doorway, and even if they didn't know her name, they knew what she had done. Then officials arrived, not just medical, but suits and badges. Airport security, FAA people with clipboards, and men whose eyes had that sharper look, the look of federal. They started asking questions right away. Where is the pilot in command? Who is this minor? Who authorized cockpit access? Who was on that radio? Isla didn't answer any of it. Because she wasn't listening. She was watching the tarmac through the cockpit window. Scanning the crowd like she always did. Except this time she wasn't counting exits. She was searching for a face. And when she saw movement at the edge of the chaos, her heart nearly stopped. A woman pushed through the line of responders, not in uniform, not with press gear, just jeans and a dark jacket, hair pulled back, moving with the kind of purpose you can't fake. Airport security tried to stop her and she didn't even slow down. Someone called out her name, or maybe they called out, "Ma'am," but she didn't turn. Isla knew that walk. That posture. That energy. She had seen it in old base photos. She had heard it in a voice for 4 years. Isla's breath caught. "Mom," she whispered. The woman looked up. And even across distance and chaos and years of hiding, Isla felt it like a shockwave. Those eyes. The same eyes that had lived in her own face in the mirror. Phoenix wasn't a voice anymore. Phoenix was real. Alive. On the ground. Running toward her. Isla didn't wait for permission. She bolted from the cockpit, down the steps that responders had positioned at the door, ignoring shouted orders behind her. She ran like she'd been holding her breath for 4 years and finally found air. The woman ran too. And right there on the tarmac, in front of flashing lights and cameras and stunned officials, mother and daughter crashed into each other. Arms locked, bodies shaking, tears pouring. Isla buried her face into that jacket like she was trying to prove it wasn't a dream. "You're real," Isla sobbed, "you're real, you're here." Phoenix held her so tight it looked like she could never let go again. "I'm here, baby, I'm here, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Around them, the airport kept moving, sirens, radios, footsteps, shouting. But inside that hug, everything else disappeared. Because for the first time in 4 years, Isla wasn't talking to her mother through a secret channel. She was holding her. And the world, watching through lenses and screens, finally understood the truth that had been hidden in static all along. Phoenix never died. She just went quiet. Until her daughter needed her loud. They tried to pull them apart almost immediately. Hands reaching in, voices saying, "Ma'am, miss, we need you over here, we need statements, we need IDs." But Phoenix lifted one palm without letting go of Isla, and something in her presence made grown men in badges hesitate. Not fear. Respect. Like her voice still carried rank even without a uniform. 5 minutes, Phoenix said, calm and low. "Just 5 minutes with my daughter." A senior officer stared at her like he was looking at a ghost that demanded rules, then nodded. 5 minutes. Isla clung to her like she was scared the world would snatch her away again. Phoenix cupped Isla's face, thumbs wiping tears, eyes scanning her the way pilots scan instruments, checking for damage, checking for shock, checking that her baby was still here. "You did it," Phoenix whispered. "You flew a damaged jet with 2 unconscious pilots and brought everyone home. Do you understand what that means?" Isla's mouth trembled. It means you trained me right." Phoenix's breath hitched. "It means you were ready. It means you rose." Behind them, cameras flashed, helicopters hovered, people shouted questions that didn't even sound like words. But Phoenix leaned in closer, voice only for Isla now. "Baby, I need you to listen. What happened today changes everything. I can't go back to the shadows after the whole world heard my voice. And I won't. Not anymore." Isla's eyes widened. "Are we safe?" Phoenix paused, choosing truth without cruelty. "We're safer than we were yesterday. Because now the people who tried to erase me can't pretend I'm gone. And I'm done running. I've been collecting proof for years. Names, money trails, messages, everything. I stayed quiet to protect you. But today you forced the truth into the open, and that may have saved more than the people on that plane." Isla swallowed. "Are they going to take you away?" Phoenix shook her head gently. "They're going to ask questions. A lot of them. And I'm going to answer every single one. Because there's only one way to end this. We expose them. We finish it." Isla's hands tightened on Phoenix's jacket. "I don't want to lose you again." "You won't," Phoenix said, firm like a promise carved into steel. "I'm not disappearing. Not ever again." Their 5 minutes ended like a door closing. Officials stepped forward, radios buzzing, paperwork appearing out of thin air. Phoenix stood up straighter, still keeping one hand on Isla's shoulder like a tether. "I'm ready," Phoenix told them. "Let's talk." The days that followed hit like a storm. Not just news stories. Investigations. Secure rooms. People in suits asking the same questions from different angles. And Phoenix answering with the calm patience of someone who'd been waiting years for this moment. Isla wasn't in every room, but she felt it anyway. The pressure. The danger. The weight of adults realizing the world wasn't as clean as they pretended. And then, like dominoes, the truth started falling into place. Quiet arrests. High-rank names suddenly relieved of duty. Headlines that used words like betrayal and espionage and internal corruption. And for the first time since Isla was 10, Phoenix wasn't just surviving. She was fighting back in daylight. Weeks later, when the noise finally softened, the army held a formal ceremony. Not for the cameras, not for the politics. But for closure. For correction. For something that finally matched the truth. Phoenix stood in dress uniform again, medals catching the light, not because she wanted praise, but because she refused to let her story be written wrong. Isla stood beside her, smaller than everyone else, yet somehow the center of gravity in that room. They spoke about courage. About impossible choices. About a mother who stayed dead to keep her child alive. About a daughter who carried a secret so heavy it should have crushed her, and still showed up calm when the sky broke open. When Isla stepped to the microphone, she didn't sound like a celebrity. She sounded like a kid who finally got her mother back. "My mom taught me something," Isla said, voice steady. "She taught me that being scared doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you have to breathe, and focus, and take the next step. She taught me that when the world goes silent, you don't wait for someone else to save you. You rise." Phoenix looked down at her, eyes shining, and Isla reached up and squeezed her hand. Months later, on a quiet afternoon far away from the flashing lights, Isla sat in the right seat of a small training plane. Not a simulator. Not a screen. Real sky, real wind, real engine vibration under her feet. Phoenix sat in the left seat, sunglasses on, hands relaxed, watching her daughter the way she used to watch instruments. Careful, calm, proud. "Ready?" Phoenix asked. Isla smiled through nerves. "Ready." They rolled down the runway, lifted into the air, and the ground fell away like fear finally letting go. Up there, with sunlight on the wings and the city shrinking below them, Isla realized something that made her throat tighten again. Phoenix wasn't just a call sign. It was a promise. That even when the world thinks you're gone. Even when everything breaks. Even when the cockpit goes silent at 35,000 feet. Love can still find a way through. A voice can still reach you. And you can still rise. And if you made it this far, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you believe you could stay calm in a moment like that, because stories like this remind us, you never know what you're capable of until the sky asks you to prove it.